They say you should keep your friends close and your enemies closer. It's a quaint little phrase, something you hear in movies. But you never, ever stop to think about what happens when your worst enemy sleeps in the room next to yours, when they sleep in the same bed as your only son, and when they are the one handing you a healthy cup of tea every single morning. For 6 months, I was fading. I was disappearing from my own life, piece by piece. The doctors were useless. They'd pat my hand, look at my charts, and tell me it was stress. They'd say it was grief for my late husband finally catching up with me. They'd say it was just my age. I knew it was something else. The fog in my brain, the constant rolling nausea, the dizziness that would steal my balance. It wasn't old age, it was a secret. And then, one rainy Tuesday, I finally understood. I wasn't sick, I was being poisoned. My name is Carol. My late husband Robert and I built a life here in Atlanta. We started with one small diner, and over 40 years, we built it into the Hawthorne Group, a chain of 12 beloved family-style restaurants across Georgia. Robert was the heart, I was the head. He was the grits and gravy, I was the balance sheet. When he passed 3 years ago, he left everything to me in a trust. The houses, the business, the entire fortune. It was all under my control. Our son, Brian, our only child, would inherit everything upon my death. It was a simple, ironclad will. I loved my son. I adored him. He was a good boy, with his father's kind heart, but he had a blind spot, a beautiful, charming, ambitious blind spot named Jessica. He'd met her at some charity gala. She was 20 years younger than him, dazzling, with a smile that could disarm an army and eyes that were as sharp and cold as chips of ice. I disliked her on sight. It was an instinct, a primal warning from a mother who knows when a predator is circling her young. But Brian was enchanted. He was a 42-year-old man acting like a love-struck teenager. They were married within 6 months, and she moved into my home, the home Robert and I built. From day one, she was suggestive. "Carol, darling, you look so tired. Why don't you let Brian and me take over the restaurant operations? You should be relaxing, traveling. Carol, this big house is so much work for you. Have you thought about downsizing? Maybe a nice, quiet condo?" She was a vulture, beautifully dressed, circling me, just waiting for me to die. I knew it, but I had no proof. I just had my instincts. This story is every parent's worst nightmare. It's about the moment you realize the person you welcomed into your family is a monster. If you believe in a mother's intuition, if you believe that justice must be served, no matter how painful, please press that like button. Comment betrayal down below if you've ever had your trust broken, and subscribe to Aunt Millie's Tales to see how I turned the tables on the woman who tried to murder me. The symptoms started slowly. So slowly, I dismissed them myself. At first, it was just fatigue. I was the kind of woman who was at her desk by 7 a.m. Suddenly, I couldn't drag myself out of bed before 9. Then came the brain fog. I'd be in a meeting with my managers, men I'd known for 20 years, and I'd forget a name. Or I'd lose my train of thought mid-sentence. Then came the nausea, a constant, sour, metallic taste in my mouth that made all food repulsive. I lost 15 pounds. My hair started to feel brittle. I was shaky. I felt like I was 100 years old. I went to 3 different specialists. They ran blood tests, MRIs, cardiac workups. The consensus was always the same. "Everything looks normal for a woman your age, Mrs. Hawthorne. You're likely just stressed and not sleeping well. Here's a prescription for a mild anti-anxiety medication." They made me feel like a hypochondriac. And through it all, Jessica was the perfect, doting daughter-in-law. In fact, My illness seemed to energize her. She took over the household, she'd fluff my pillows, and every single morning, without fail, she would bring me her special health tea. I ordered it from a special online herbalist, Carol. She'd chirp, her voice all honey and sunshine. It's a blend of rare roots and flowers, guaranteed to boost your energy. You just need to drink it every morning, all of it. The tea was strange. It was a dark, murky color, and it had a bitter aftertaste that she tried to mask with an enormous amount of honey. "It's potent, so the taste is strong," she'd laugh. "But it's so good for you." My son, Brian, ate it up. He saw a caring wife, not a cunning schemer. "Mom, isn't she amazing?" "She's taking such good care of you," he'd say, beaming at her. I'd just nod, sipping the bitter tea, feeling sicker by the day. I tried to protest. "Dear, I don't think the tea is helping. It makes my stomach hurt." Jessica would put on a wounded face. "Oh, Carol, I'm trying so hard." The herbalist said it can take a few weeks for your body to detox. You just have to trust the process. Brian would get that defensive look in his eyes. "Mom, just drink the tea. She's trying to help. You're always so critical of her." I was being gaslit in my own home. I was being told that my sickness was in my head, and that the one person making me sick was my savior. I was trapped. I was weak, and I was getting weaker. The turning point wasn't a doctor. It was a cat, my husband's cat to be precise. A cranky old ginger tabby named Barnaby. Barnaby hated everyone except me and Robert. He especially hated Jessica. He'd hiss every time she entered a room. One morning, Jessica brought me the tea as usual. I was sitting in the sunroom, and my hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold the mug. "Here you go, Carol. Drink up, all of it," she said, smiling that bright, terrifying smile. As I reached for it, my hand spasmed. The mug lurched, and a large portion of the dark tea splashed onto the light-colored rug. Jessica's reaction was instant, and it wasn't concern. It was fury. "Oh, for heaven's sake! This is a Persian rug!" she snapped, her mask slipping for a fraction of a second. She stormed off to the kitchen to get a cloth. In that moment, Barnaby, who had been sleeping under a chair, padded over. He was a curious cat. He sniffed at the puddle of tea on the rug. And then he began to lap at it. Just a few small licks. I didn't think anything of it. By that afternoon, Barnaby was limp. He wouldn't eat. He was hiding. By evening, he was vomiting violently. He was so weak he couldn't even stand. I rushed him to the 24-hour emergency vet. They took him in immediately, running tests. The vet came out, his face grim. "Mrs. Hawthorne, his heart rate is erratic and his kidneys are failing. It's not a virus, it's not a bacterial infection. It looks like he's ingested a powerful toxin. Has he eaten any household plants? Antifreeze?" "No," I said, my blood running cold. "Nothing. Just his normal food." "Well," the vet said, "something is poisoning him. We're doing our best, but you should prepare yourself." I drove home at 3 a.m., the vet's words echoing in my head. A powerful toxin. Barnaby had never been sick a day in his life. And he had only ingested one new thing, the tea, Jessica's specialty. The tea she insisted I drink every single day. The tea she got angry about when I spilled it. I sat in my dark, silent house. The fog in my brain was replaced by a terrifying, cold, sharp clarity. She wasn't just trying to suggest I move into a condo. She wasn't just ambitious. She was actively, systematically, and patiently murdering me. She was killing me right in front of my own son and using kindness as her weapon. The blood pounding in my ears was so loud I thought I would pass out. But I didn't. Instead, I got angry. A cold, quiet, deep rage I hadn't felt since Robert died. She thought I was a frail old woman. She thought I was stupid. She thought I was already gone. She had no idea who she was dealing with. The next day, I didn't go to the restaurants. I told Jessica I was feeling particularly weak and would be staying in my room. The first thing I did was drive to an electronics store. I paid cash for the most expensive, highest definition nanny cam they had, one disguised as a digital clock. I went home and placed it on a bookshelf in the kitchen, angled perfectly to see the counter where she prepared her drinks. That evening, I told her, "Jessica, dear, I'm afraid I'm all out of that special tea. I must have had the last of it." Her eyes lit up. "Oh, no problem, Carol. I have a brand new batch. I'll make you a fresh cup first thing in the morning." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my chair, watching the hours tick by, every fiber of my being vibrating with adrenaline. At 7 a.m., I heard her moving around downstairs. I waited until 7:30, then I went down. "Good morning," I said, forcing my voice to sound frail. "I think I could use a cup of that tea, dear. I feel terribly weak." "Of course, Carol. You just go sit in the sunroom. I'll bring it right out." I did as I was told. I sat there pretending to read the paper, my heart hammering against my ribs. She brought the tea, smiling. "Here you are. Nice and hot. Drink it all down." I smiled back. "Thank you, dear. You are so good to me." I waited until she and Brian had left the house for a lunch meeting she had arranged. Then, I went to my study, locked the door, and retrieved the SD card from the camera. I put it into my computer. My hands were shaking so hard, I could barely get it into the slot. I clicked play. There she was. The kitchen was empty. She looked over her shoulder. Then she did something that chilled me to the bone. She walked to the kitchen door and locked it. She thought she was alone. She turned back to the counter. She pulled out my favorite mug. She put in the tea bag, and then she reached into the pocket of her pristine apron. She pulled on a pair of blue latex gloves. She took out a small, unlabeled glass dropper bottle. She unscrewed the cap, and she methodically, precisely, counted the drops into my mug. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 drops of a clear liquid. She screwed the cap back on, put the bottle in her pocket, and then poured the hot water. She added the honey, stirring it aggressively. Then she did the most horrifying thing of all. She took a different spoon, dipped the very tip of it only into the honey on the main spoon, and tasted it. Not to check for poison. To check that the honey was strong enough to mask the taste. She peeled off the gloves, threw them into the bottom of the trash, and unlocked the door, her face arranged back into a mask of loving concern. I watched the footage 3 times. I couldn't breathe. I ran to my bathroom and was violently ill. But this time, it wasn't the poison. It was the rage. The pure, unadulterated betrayal. This was the woman my son loved. This was the woman who kissed me on the cheek. I saved the video file to 3 different hard drives. But I knew it wasn't enough. I needed to know what it was. The next morning, I repeated the performance. "More tea, please, Jessica." She brought it. I took it to my room, to drink in peace. I didn't drink it. I poured the entire steaming hot contents into a sealed glass bottle I had prepared. I labeled it. I took the footage, and I took the tea sample, and I didn't go to my doctor. I drove to a private toxicology lab in the city. I paid a $2,000 rush fee in cash. I told them I suspected a severe contamination in my imported tea. They promised me results in 24 hours. Waiting for that phone call was the longest day of my life. I went to the vet. Barnaby was still alive, but barely. "We're flushing his system," the vet said. but the toxin caused severe cardiac arrhythmia. He's a fighter, but it's bad. I sat and stroked his fur, whispering, "You saved my life, old friend. Now I'm going to save us both." The call came the next afternoon. "Mrs. Hawthorne, we have your report. This is not a contamination. This is a deliberate poisoning." My voice was a whisper. "What is it?" "The liquid in the tea contains a massive concentration of tetrahydrozoline. It's the primary chemical in over-the-counter redness relief eye drops. Vicine." My mind flashed to the small, unlabeled bottle. "What does it do if you drink it?" The lab tech paused. "In this concentration, ingested daily? It's a slow-kill weapon. It causes blurred vision, nausea, severe dizziness, and, over time, respiratory failure and complete cardiac arrest. It's designed to mimic the symptoms of old age and heart disease. Whoever gave this to you was trying to kill you and make it look like you died of natural causes." I hung up the phone. I didn't cry. I had moved past tears. I was now a block of ice. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't just go to Brian. He was in too deep. He would try to reason, to find an excuse. He would defend her, and I couldn't just go to the police. Jessica would lie. She would cry. She would say I was a senile, vengeful old woman trying to frame her. Number. I needed to destroy her. I needed to do it in a way that she could not escape, deny, or twist. I needed to do it in front of my son. I began my plan. I called the manager at our flagship restaurant, the Hawthorne Grill, in Buckhead. "Michael," I said, "I am hosting a private formal dinner this Friday. Just for 3. Me, Brian, and Jessica. I'm going to be making a major announcement about the future of the company." The news, as I intended, spread like wildfire. Brian and Jessica heard the rumor within an hour. That night, they were giddy. Jessica was practically vibrating with excitement. "A dinner? An announcement?" she said, trying to sound casual. "I wonder what it could be." "I think," I said, smiling at her, "you'll find it very illuminating, dear." She thought I was finally retiring. She thought she had won. Friday night arrived. I had the private dining room, the Robert Hawthorne room, prepared. It was our most exclusive room, with a large, beautiful mahogany table. At one end of the room, there was a large 80-inch television screen we used for corporate presentations. I arrived early. I had the tech set up. The video file was queued. When Brian and Jessica arrived, she looked like a queen. She was wearing a new, glittering red dress, her hair and makeup perfect. She was triumphant. Brian, my poor, blind son, just looked happy. "Mom, this is wonderful. It feels like we're celebrating." "Oh, we are, Brian. We truly are," I said, motioning for them to sit. We had appetizers. We made small talk. Jessica was overflowing with compliments about the restaurant, about my dress. She was already playing the part of the new matriarch. Finally, after the plates were cleared, I stood up. "Thank you both for coming. As you know, I've been very unwell for some time, and it's forced me to do a lot of thinking about my future, about the future of this company, about legacy." Jessica was leaning forward, her eyes glittering. This was her moment. "And I've realized that my poor health has been largely due to one single thing. Jessica, you, in particular, have been so dedicated to my well-being, especially with that special tea you've been making me every morning. I was so touched by your dedication that I wanted to share your secret recipe." Jessica's smile faltered. Brian looked confused. "Mom, what are you talking about?" I smiled and picked up the small remote. "I'm talking about this." I clicked the button. The giant screen at the end of the room flickered to life. It wasn't a PowerPoint presentation. It was my kitchen, in high definition. The sound was off, but the images were crystal clear. We all watched. We saw Jessica, her back to the camera. We saw her lock the door. We saw her put on the latex gloves. We saw her pull out the small, amber, unlabeled bottle. Brian stopped breathing. "What is this?" We watched her count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We watched her stir the poison into my cup. We watched her taste the honey. We watched her strip off the gloves and hide the evidence. The video ended. The screen went black. There was no sound in the room but the ringing in my ears. Jessica was the color of chalk. She was staring at the screen, her mouth open. Brian slowly turned his head. He looked at his wife. The adoration was gone. His face was a mask of pure, uncomprehending horror. "Jessica," he whispered, "what is that video?" "Tell me it's a fake, Mom." "That's a fake, right? A sick joke?" "It's not a joke, Brian," I said, my voice as cold and clear as a winter morning. "It's a nanny cam. And that bottle? It's Visine, tetrahydrozoline, a poison. According to the toxicology lab, I've been ingesting it every day for at least 3 months. Enough to slowly stop my heart. Enough to make my natural death look perfectly believable." You... Jessica stammered, finally finding her voice. It wasn't a voice of remorse. It was a hiss of rage. "You senile old bitch! You set me up!" "No, dear," I said, placing my napkin on the table. "You set yourself up. You were just too arrogant and too greedy to see it. You thought I was stupid. You thought I was weak. You thought I was already dead." "Brian!" she shrieked, turning to him, her eyes wild. "Are you going to let her do this?" "She's crazy. She's framing me." Brian just looked at her. He had tears streaming down his face. "You did it," he whispered. "The tea, the cat. Oh my God, the cat. You did it. You were killing my mother." "She wanted your inheritance, Brian," I said, standing up. "She just wasn't patient enough to wait for it." "I'll deny it. You have no proof," she screamed. "Oh, but I do," I said. "I have the video. I have the signed, notarized toxicology report. And I have a full copy of all of it sitting with my attorney. I've left very specific instructions. If I accidentally fall down the stairs tonight or have a sudden, unexpected heart attack, my lawyer is to walk it directly into the district attorney's office, along with a charge of premeditated murder. You see, Jessica, you have 2 choices. You can walk out of this restaurant, out of this family, and out of this state with nothing but the dress on your back and never, ever see me or my son again. Or you can stay, and I will have you arrested for attempted murder before your dessert arrives." She stared at me. The mask was gone. All I saw was pure, distilled hatred. She looked at Brian, who wouldn't even meet her eyes. She knew she had lost. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly on the floor. She said nothing. She just turned and she walked out of the room. We heard her run down the hall. Brian sat there, his head in his hands, sobbing. My heart broke for him, for his blindness, for the pain he was in. But my heart was also cold. He had chosen her. He had dismissed my pain. He had believed the lie. She wanted my inheritance. She wanted my money. She wanted my life. But she forgot that I am the one who built it. She forgot that I am the one who signs the checks. She tried to poison me in the dark. I simply exposed her in the light. My revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. It was a balance sheet. And in the end, I always make sure the books are balanced.